What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guys, Cody and Derek, back for another one, guys. Well, the preseason has come and gone now, guys, and here we are, ready for the regular season, and roster cuts are already happening for the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts have just recently cut some guys to try to trim down that final 53-man roster. Colts and other NFL teams need to do so by Tuesday at 4 p.m. So the Colts have some work ahead of them still to get their way to the final 53-man roster. So with that being said, we wanted to kind of bring our thoughts on our best guess, if you will, on a final 53-man roster prediction for the Indianapolis Colts. Again, guys, a lot can change between now and Tuesday at 4 p.m. The Colts can cut some more players. Obviously, they will. And also, the Colts can potentially claim some other players. So maybe, Derek, how the initial cut looks won't be exactly how the final 53-man roster completely fleshes itself out. But when it comes to that, I thought it'd be nice to kind of look at it, give our final 53-man roster predictions with it coming so very quickly here. And obviously, the Colts will have, a little bit of time between then and the regular season to get everything situated when it comes to their final 53-man roster for week one. But with that being said, Derek, kind of based off of what the Colts have done in the past and also some moves we've already seen them make, this kind of is kind of helpful so far for our prediction for the final 53-man roster. So, Derek, without further ado, let's jump right into it. Let's start on the offensive side of the ball here for the Indianapolis Colts. The first thing we have to do is talk about the quarterback position. How many, Derek, are we keeping, and who are those?
Yeah, for the quarterbacks, we're definitely keeping three of them this year. Obviously, Anthony Richardson leading the way, Joe Flacco, who he signed in the offseason. And the third one, that one's up for debate. Me personally, I would like for it to be Jason Bean, but I think Cody and I's consensus is probably going to be Sam Ehlinger. Just makes the most sense, just since he's been the one that's been trotted out there quicker than everybody else. Well, who knows? We'll find out by Tuesday, but we think that those three are most likely going to be it.
Yeah, and this is a scenario where I could see Derek the Colts also cutting Sam Ehlinger and only keeping two technically, but trying to get him back on the practice squad. I could very much see that being a reality, especially with another position, which we'll talk about here, with some moves that could be coming. And also there will be plenty of, I'm sure, of some waiver claims and stuff like that post cuts where the Colts will maybe change, add a player, subtract a player, all that kind of stuff, in certain positions. But as of right now, we're going to stick with three, especially considering some of the cuts that made the most sense. I think if the cuts hadn't happened and one specific player, Ronnie Harrison Jr., hadn't been already released, I think we might have switched how many quarterbacks we have. But as it stands right now, we're going to stick with three right now to finish that out. But let's continue on, Derek. Let's talk about the running back position here for the Colts. For this one, we have four running backs. Those obviously, the four would be Jonathan Taylor, Trey Sermon, Tyler Goodson, and Evan Hull. So that does mean, unfortunately, a player like Xavier Scott does not make the final cut for 53-man rosters. Talk to me about the running back position, these four guys that we talked about.
Yeah, so, for the four that we're going to probably go with, I think it's pretty obvious for everyone right now. Jonathan Taylor at the number one, Trey Sermon at the two, clearly still dealing with the hamstring problem, but hope to see him back here relatively soon. Running back 3 and 4, that's going to come down to how Shane Steichen and the group feel about it. Tyler Goodson and Evan Hull. I would venture to say that Goodson is a better runner specifically than Hull, but Hull is a little bit better of a pass catcher out in the open field than Goodson. Again, it all just comes down to the game plan and what the Colts want to do with it. But those guys will round out the back end of that running back roster group and see where we go from there.
I do feel like Goodson has had an extremely strong preseason from what we've seen. He's just kind of that shifty guy out of the backfield, Derek, that I think can do a little bit of both. He can, run it, catch it out of the backfield, do a little bit of both, which I think gives him the advantage in my mind, at least right now, over Evan Hull. Evan Hull's had a pretty good preseason in camp as well, but I just think Tyler Goodson, even last year, he showed some things. When he got opportunities, Derek, especially like primarily that Pittsburgh game, he showed some things in that game. So definitely excited there. You mentioned Trey Sermon. Shane Steichen said he and Juju Brents will be back next week for practice, which is definitely good news. So it looks like he'll be ready to go for week one, which is awesome. So those are the 4 running backs that we are going to keep here for the Colts. Let's move on to the wide receiver room now. And this is a group that actually will probably have a good amount of players in it. We decided to go with 6 wide receivers here, Derek, for the Indianapolis Colts. And there's a lot of names here with this wide receiver room. Obviously, we already saw Greg Ward get released, which is definitely interesting. But obviously, you got guys like, Michael Pittman Jr., Josh Downs. Hopefully he'll be ready by week 1. Alec Pierce, Adonai Mitchell, and a couple other guys as well. Derek, who are the 6? We know the top 4, but who in your mind would be the final 2 to kind of round it out?
Yeah, of course, the top 4 being Downs, Pittman, Pierce, and Mitchell. Now, the final 2, I think most people understand it at this point. That was Ashton Doolin and Anthony Gould. Both guys that are going to be filling some special teams needs for this Indianapolis Colts team moving forward. And, it's difficult for the Colts right now because, you've had a couple of wide receivers in this preseason, especially someone like a Laquan Treadwell, who you signed in the offseason, who has had a fantastic offseason, caught everything that's been thrown to him. Just only thing that sucks is, and that would make me think that might be the only reason that the Colts might have 7. Cody, it's not been the craziest thing in the world to think that, you could have 7 on the roster at wide receiver if you felt that it was important enough to have that kind of versatility. But with Downs supposedly coming back within the next couple weeks, I doubt that would happen. So, I probably will end up rounding it out with Gould and Doolin there.
Yeah, that's tough. I want Treadwell to make this roster just because of how he's looked, but I just frankly don't know if there's a spot for him if he can't play special teams. I just honestly don't really know. That's the tough part about it. Like, I think any other year he probably would have a really good chance to make the final 53 man, but it's going to be tough for a guy like Laquan Treadwell. So we'll see on that, but definitely a guy that I think has earned roster consideration because, Derek, when we heard the name, you're like, this guy's not going to make the final 53, man. That's what I think we all probably thought at the first, signing initially of him. But to give him credit, he's looked really, really strong in this preseason. So I'm excited for him, whatever that does look like, whether he gets an opportunity with the Colts or another team. Definitely want to just give him an opportunity to potentially kind of start working on, doing some stuff in his NFL career. Hasn't been a great career for him, especially considering where he was drafted. But hopefully he gets an opportunity somewhere. Hopefully it's with Indy, but we'll see.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to the tight end position. This is an interesting one too, Derek, because there's a lot of tight ends. There's currently 7 on the roster right now. And obviously with the Jelani Woods, injury, who he might be, going to miss expected 3-4 months. So he's not going to obviously be a factor for a good chunk of the season. So that kind of helps it a little bit with this tight end room. You have guys like Kylan Granson, Mo Alley Cox, who have been on this. You really have been running with the ones. They've been doing a lot there. So you feel like those 2 are pretty much locks at this point. You have Drew Ogletree, who I would think right now, Derek, is probably your tight end 3. And then you have a guy like Will Mallory, who I think can slide into that number 4 position pretty easily. And there's really not another guy on this tight end room right now, Derek, unless you have another guy. I think it's pretty cut and dry with the 4 that we have here for tight end. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think now that Jelani Woods is, going to be out for an extended period of time, I think it does make a lot of sense with the 4 that you now have, because we were having the question mark, like, who is the odd man out? Well, unfortunately, due to an injury, we now have the full understanding of what this group's going to look like. And, it's going to be Granson and Mo leading the way, and then Ogletree and Mallory filling out the back role, however that may be. But now we understand who the top 4 are actually going to be.
Yep, no doubt. No debate in my mind right there. I think those are the top 4. Depending how you want to look at it, I think all those 4 guys are going to make the roster here. All right, let's move to the offensive line. This one's kind of interesting, Derek, because I could see some potential movement here. Like, I could see the Colts keeping 9. I could see them keeping 10. We just ended up going with 9. I think that really does depend, Derek, on, a guy like Tanner Bortolini. Like, how long is Tanner Bortolini going to be out? Is it going to be, multiple weeks into the regular season, or is he going to maybe, be ready near the start of the season? I guess we'll have to see on that. But then obviously you factor in a guy like Dalton Tucker, who's had a pretty good camp and a pretty good preseason. So I'm kind of debating here, Derek, and I think it kind of depends how you view it. We went with 9, but I could easily see the Colts going with 10. They did 9 last year, but I don't know, Derek. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and this one's going to be tricky because, Bortolini, he's dealing with an injury. Don't know how long that's going to keep him out. I don't think it's going to keep him out for very long. But yeah, like you said, the Colts have had some times in recent years where they only have kept 9 offensive linemen. And, with the versatility that you have with the Indianapolis Colts and the offensive linemen in which they've chosen, you have some of that flexibility. Like Gonsalves can move inside if, bar none, anything drastic happens. Gonsalves has that experience on the inside in college. He can do that. Then Blake Freeland obviously is your swing tackle. We've had debates on whether or not Gonsalves will do that. And then, you have Bortolini who can play center or guard. And, a couple other things could happen there. I mean, I would like to think the Colts would give Dalton Tucker the benefit of the doubt, given the fact that he's looked like the best backup offensive lineman we have in preseason. I would like to think that he's going to stick on this roster, but I don't know, because if you have Danny Pinter coming back into the mix, that could throw some things off as well. It's going to be interesting to see who's going to be an odd man out in this, because there's going to be someone that's going to be a surprise cut, and I'm not going to like it one way or another. So, yeah, we'll have to see how they match that out, and if they even go 10 offensive linemen, then you wouldn't have to worry about it at all.
Yeah, and if you did go, you'd have to make the choice. I mean, as much as you don't love it, let's be honest, Dalton Tucker is the easiest guy to get on the practice squad compared to the other guys. I mean, Danny Pinter, the only guy healthy right now that can actually play center or has played center in a certain, capacity at a semi-high level at one point, right? So I definitely don't think he's a guy, especially with the injury to Bortolini, that's going anywhere. So maybe if that is the case, that is a more of a situation where Dalton Tucker does get waived, but he does get brought back on the practice squad. But I could see a scenario where they keep 9 or 10 because they've done that before. And similar to the defensive line, which we'll just jump right into, this is an extremely deep group. Now, obviously, got a little bit more thin with the Samson Ebukam injury and stuff like that, but it still is an extremely deep group, Derek, overall. We had 9 guys that we were keeping on this defensive line for the Indianapolis Colts. Those obviously those 9 players that you're talking about for the Colts and their defensive line. Obviously, you have Latu, you have Kwity Paye, you have Taekwon Lewis, you have Dio Adangbo, you have guys like DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart, you have Addy Tomiwa, you have Raekwon Davis. Like, there's a lot of different names in here. You throw in a guy like Isaiah Land, who's had a really, really strong preseason as well. What are your thoughts just on this defensive line room in general? Because I don't really see much debate, honestly, here, Derek, on this defensive line room, because I feel like you really have it with the 4 guys in the interior and the 5 guys at the edge. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think you and I, Cody, really have any disagreements about who the actual linemen are that we want to keep on this roster. I think the ultimate question is do they keep 10? Because they've done it before. I think even last year they did it at 10. So you and I were talking off air, like, who, if they do keep 10, who is it that gets put in? Is it Eric Johnson on the inside? Is it Taven Bryan on the inside? Or is it, maybe a wild card like a Jannard Avery? I have no idea. So,
or even maybe like a guy like Jonah Lalu, their 7th round pick. Like, I don't know. Like, I think if I'm choosing, I'd probably say
I don't even know, because it's so hard for me. Like, I don't trust in Eric Johnson. I really don't. And I don't have any trust in Taven Bryan, but I haven't seen enough of Lalu to actually make it a consensus on that.
Well, see, the only thing I would say for a guy like Taven Bryan is, does he look better at the 3 tech than he does at the 1 tech? And that could be a consideration as well, with him. So I don't know. I think if I have to choose one, I'm probably going with Taven Bryan, but it's really up in the air. It could be multiple guys at this point, but I think it does come from the interior, to be honest with you. But I guess we'll see on that. But we're going with 9 right now, but wouldn't be surprised at all if the Colts went with 10. Because they always seem to do that. They've done that the last couple of years. Last year, they had 10 guys on the initial roster as well. But I think for sure 9, and the 9 guys that I think have all played well when given opportunities this preseason. So definitely a really deep group. And I think they definitely would have kept 10, Derek, if they did have Ebukam healthy as well. But 9 right now for the Indianapolis Colts defensive line. Okay, we got a couple more positions here to talk about. Linebacker, we're going with 5 guys. That obviously would be Zaire Franklin, EJ Speed, Sagun Alubi. You have Jalen Carlisle, the rookie, and then you have Grant Stewart. So, you have some guys that have, obviously been entrenched starters who have played at a pretty high level. You have a guy like Alubi who came in, and I think right now, Derek, is that third linebacker. You have Jalen Carlisle, who's looked really, really good when he's been on the field this year, and obviously the talent speaks for itself. A very athletic and tall player for a linebacker, moving from safety to linebacker. And then you got a guy like Grant Stewart, who's just a special teams demon, man. He's just absolutely incredible with those dreadlocks and stuff like that. We love to see that. So talk to me about these linebackers.
Yeah, the top 5 of them, that's no surprise. You cover a lot of different aspects here. Obviously, the starters we've had for this whole time, but on the back end of it, Alubi, Stewart, and Carlisle, it all makes sense. Alubi has definitely looked like the best backup linebacker that we have, and has looked it since the beginning of last year. Stewart is a special teams ace as well. He does a lot of great things special teams wise. And Carlisle, obviously, you drafted him for a reason this year and moved him at a different position because of his skill set. I think he showed enough in preseason to warrant being, in this area. So yeah, I would take those guys.
No doubt. And I think Carlisle's out of all the linebackers, maybe not all of them, but he's probably one of the best in coverage. So I definitely wonder if there's just like certain packages, even from day one, the Colts use him in. I could definitely see that being a scenario as well. So that's what we think for linebacker. And then moving to cornerback. This is one, Derek, where I don't know if we're going to agree on this, but I think the one thing we do agree on is the number. We're going to stick with 6 guys at the cornerback position. You obviously have your top 3 guys you feel pretty good about. I would even say top 4, honestly, with Kenny Moore, Juju Brents, Jalen Jones, and Dallas Flowers. But then when you go to 5 and 6, that's really where the debate begins, because, you have players that are coming back like Darryl Baker, Chris Lamons, who played last year, who have some special teams experience as well. And then you have the 2 rookies, Micah Abraham, who showed some stuff in the preseason, who I think could definitely play some backup, slot corner for the Indianapolis Colts, which you need. And then you also obviously have a player in Jalen Simpson as well. And you want to throw in a guy like Amir Speed, even, who played some special teams for you last year, who obviously has some size to him. So, there's a lot of debate on who those 5th and 6th corners are going to be. I personally wouldn't cut a player like Micah Abraham. I think he showed you enough in the preseason that I think he has an opportunity. And obviously, the college tape speaks for itself as well with his production. But I totally understand, whichever way the Colts go. But which way do you expect the corners 5 and 6 to go?
Well, as far as the corners go, of course, like you said, Juju and then Jalen and Kenny starting it out. Flowers is another one in there. How I would expect it, I believe Lamons is going to get the nod, mainly due to the fact that he can play in the nickel spot too, if you needed him to. So I think that's important. And then to get one more outside guy comes down to Darryl Baker and Amir Speed. And, I think they would probably go Darryl Baker just because Darryl Baker's a little bit younger. I think Darryl Baker has a potential for a little more upside than Amir Speed or anyone else on this roster for that matter, of the guys that are left at the cornerback position. So that is probably the 6 that I would go with there.
Yeah, see, I knew we were going to disagree. I'm definitely going Mike Abraham. I'm keeping him on the roster. I think he plays some really important positions there. And give me, I don't know, like I would say probably Daryl Baker as well. I would keep Daryl Baker because he, like you said, he's got some size to him. Yeah, he's not that great of a corner, but I mean, if he's just playing special teams and he's really down the depth chart, like I'm all right with that. So, but yeah, I definitely want to keep a guy like Mike Abraham. I just think he's got something special to him. So we'll see on that. But regardless, I think 6 is the magic number there for the Indianapolis Colts. Let's move to safety now. And this is one that actually just happened, with the release of Ronnie Harrison Jr., which was a surprise to a lot of people, including us. We have the Colts keeping 4. I think initially we would have had them keeping 5 here, but with Ronnie Harrison Jr. being released, again, he could still come back. Like, that's still an option. But right now, as it stands, with the Colts just, not really having a lot of other quality guys in there, we're going to go with 4 at the safety position. What do you think?
Yeah, I think 4 is probably what you're going to have to do at this point because they obviously released Ronnie Harrison, which is definitely a shock for a lot of us right now. But I will say there's a lot of flexibility you can have at the position. I think that's fine. The top 4 that I would suggest at this point, I mean, it's obviously Julian Blackmon and Nick Cross. You have to have Rodney Thomas in there because of the backup role. And at this point, you're going to have Trevor Denbo out there because Trevor is a special teams guy. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. No real depth behind Julian Blackmon. Clearly, the Indianapolis Colts are banking on Julian Blackmon to stay healthy this year, to have him be a centerpiece of the team moving forward. Only thing is I mean, if Julian Blackmon does get hurt, then you would hopefully be able to put Nick Cross at strong safety and then Rodney Thomas at free safety. But we'll see how that turns out.
This is one like I'm just like I hope they make some sort of move here, for some quality depth. Like I think that's just one where, especially with the release of Ronnie Harrison, I'm like, you almost have to sign somebody, whether that's bringing Harrison back or, bringing in somebody else, as well. I don't know, but that's kind of how I feel about it when it comes to safety, So again, if they do that, then maybe they do have 5 there, obviously with Denbo being that last guy being special teams who they kept a year ago as well for the same reason. And then you have the final 3 specialists, Derek, and that rounds it out at 53. So definitely going to be some tough cuts. I'm sure there will be some guys that will be surprise cuts a little bit. We've already had one, obviously, with Ronnie Harrison. I'm sure there's going to be a few more to come. There always is every single year. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens there for the Colts and their final 53-man roster. But guys, like we said, the Colts have until Tuesday at 4 to trim their roster down all the way to 53. So they still have some work ahead of them. But let us know your thoughts, guys, overall on our 53-man roster projection for the Colts. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree in any way? Let us know all those things. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, guys, go Colts.